Hello and welcome, I'm Joshua Barnes and you're watching NewsX World. Let's first take a look at our top stories. Donald Trump says that Russian President Vladimir Putin has told him that he will respond to Ukraine's Operation Spider's Web drone attack after the leaders spoke directly on the phone. Trump also warns that there will be no immediate peace in the war. Meanwhile, North Korean leader Kim Jong Un has pledged unconditional support for Russia in their ongoing war with Ukraine and other international issues. This comes after Kim met with Russia's security chief Sergei Shoigu in Pyongyang. The United States has vetoed a draft UN Security Council resolution that demanded an immediate, unconditional and permanent ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. The other 14 countries on the council voted in favour of the draft as the UN says Israel is hindering its aid operation. US President Donald Trump has signed a proclamation on Wednesday banning people from 12 countries from entering the United States. Trump cites national security, saying the move was needed to protect against foreign terrorists. Syria has agreed to give the International Atomic Energy Agency access to suspected former nuclear sites. The move comes amid reports of killings of several people from the Alawite minority by security checkpoint personnel. President Trump has suspended the entry of international students studying at Harvard for an initial 6 months. The proclamation cited national security concerns as the reason for the suspension amid an ongoing feud between the US administration and the Ivy League school. A US judge has ruled that hundreds of Venezuelans deported to El Salvador must be given the chance to challenge their detentions. This is the first ruling addressing the Trump administration's move to deport alleged gang members under an 18th century wartime law. South Korea's new leader, Lee Jae-myung, has held his first cabinet meeting after decisively winning a snap presidential election. The meeting focused on an emergency package to address economic uncertainty and to aid households. We start this hour in Europe. Russian President Vladimir Putin has vowed to respond to a massive Ukrainian drone strike on Russian air bases. Donald Trump has warned. The US president had a phone call with the Russian leader that lasted over an hour. The call marked their first conversation since Ukraine launched Operation Spider's Web, a surprise attack targeting airfields deep inside of Russia, including bases believed to house nuclear-capable long-range bombers. Kyiv claims the operation destroyed or damaged at least 41 Russian aircraft, with strikes as far as 2,600 miles from the front lines. Trump, who shared details of the call on social media, said President Putin told him very strongly that he would have to respond to the attack. Trump also added that the phone call would not lead to immediate peace between Russia and Ukraine. Additionally, in an interview, the Russian Deputy Foreign Minister has said that Russian aircraft were damaged but not destroyed in the June 1st attack by Ukraine, and that they will be restored. Apart from the attack on Russia, both the leaders also discussed Iran's nuclear program. Additionally, according to the Kremlin, Putin and Trump also discussed the conflict between India and Pakistan. This call comes as Ukraine continues to urge for stronger Western support, with officials in Washington pushing for additional sanctions against Russia and a faster flow of military aid. Trump, while promising on the campaign trail to end the war if re-elected, did not reiterate that claim following his latest conversation with Vladimir Putin. Meanwhile, in a related development, the Vatican also confirmed that Pope Leo spoke with President Putin, the first such conversation since his election. In a rare public statement, the Holy See said Pope called on Russia to take a step that favours peace, emphasising the urgency of dialogue and humanitarian relief efforts. Well, we bring you some breaking news now, and Ukraine's defence minister has said that Ukraine will receive up to 1.3 billion euros for domestic weapons production in 2025 from its allies. This breaking news coming in after that conversation between President Trump and Vladimir Putin, the Russian president. Joining us to discuss all of these developments that we've had is Professor Vasilin Popovsky, Professor and Vice Dean at the Jindal Global Law School. Thank you very much for joining us, Professor Popovsky. Let's first look at this breaking news. A huge amount of aid being supplied to Ukraine from its allies. What's the significance of this moment?
Excellent news. We will see more of this, and there are many countries in the world that are clearly seeing where the war is going. Ukraine launched on 1st of June an unprecedented in history attack on destroying 41 aircraft, and these are strategic bombers. They are not easy to repair, by the way. How Russians try to do that, I'm not sure. They don't have even the parts and the equipment for that. But yes, 1.3 billion, it's an excellent news for Ukraine. There will be more to come. All the European countries, Australia, Canada, Japan, South Korea, many, many more countries will support Ukraine. And for that matter, the phone call between Trump and Putin is inadequate, irrelevant. Those two are trying to get somehow in the news and say something, but that absolutely doesn't change anything. Russia cannot respond, cannot revenge. They can launch another rocket and kill a couple of civilians here and there, but that's all Russia can do. They cannot win on the battlefield. They cannot mobilize more soldiers. The North Korean will help a little bit with some weapons, with some soldiers, but that doesn't change the end game. The end game is Russia is going to be defeated and Putin will go.
Professor Popovsky, I do want to allude briefly back on to Putin's comments. Trump saying that he has signalled that he is going to respond to this Operation Spider's Web. How far could that response go? Is there a potential for a weapon that we haven't seen used yet in the war, potentially nuclear?
No, I don't expect that. I expect another launch of missiles, Iskanders, some Shahid, some drones on civilian targets in Ukraine. That's what Russia did over the last 3 years already. There is no other response. And see, it's already 4 days after the massive Ukrainian action all over Russia, territories even in Irkutsk, in Siberia were hit. And there is no, Putin is not even talking about this. It's a phone call which simply wants those two to be back on the news, as I said. Putin and Trump want to get some significance, but they cannot. Both of them are absolutely inadequate. I don't expect any serious response apart from, again, some missiles hitting civilian targets, and that's all that Russia can do.
Professor Popovsky, you will be staying with us because we are staying on the topic of the Russia-Ukraine war. North Korean leader Kim Jong Un has met with Russia's Security Council Secretary Sergei Shoigu in Pyongyang. During the talks, Kim pledged unconditional support for Russia's stance on Ukraine and broader international affairs, according to North Korean state media. He reaffirmed Pyongyang's commitment to backing Moscow's foreign policy and vowed to uphold the bilateral treaty signed during President Putin's visit last year. The treaty includes a mutual defence pact requiring immediate military assistance if either country faces armed aggression. Their discussions also focused on deepening the strategic partnership and broadening cooperation across various sectors. Shoigu, in turn, praised the matchless heroism of North Korean troops who, he said, fought alongside Russian forces in the battle to liberate the Kursk region. Bringing you back in, Professor Popovsky, this meeting, of course, comes amid diplomatic talks in Turkey to try and end this war, calls for ceasefires, calls for pressure on Russia. Given the fact that North Korean troops have already been fighting alongside Russian forces, how important is this conversation and continued support for Russia from North Korea, but also how bad could this be for Ukraine?
Well, North Korea is the only country that can support Russia somehow with some soldiers and some equipment. No other country in the world, and there are 193 other countries in the world. North Korea is the only remaining small chance for Putin to get something from somewhere. Again, compare that just to what the breaking news just told us about the amount of money that goes to Ukraine, and compare that with some verbal agreement from North Korea to Shoigu, even not to the high level of the Russian leadership. And again, yes, North Korean will send some weapons and soldiers, but so what? They already did. There is nothing new here. There is nothing Ukraine should be too much worried about. Yes, North Korea will help Russia, but so what? That's what Russia is left with. Nobody else in the world apart from North Korea is helping Russia with military support. And that's already pretty clear what does this mean long term.
Yes, Professor Popovsky, you will be staying with us once again because we now move to Ukraine and the United States, who are reportedly moving forward with plans to start a new minerals fund by the end of this year. Ukraine's first Deputy Prime Minister, Yulia Sviridenko, said the fund's first board meeting is expected in July. This fund, strongly supported by US President Donald Trump, is meant to help develop Ukraine's rich mineral resources. The agreement was signed in April after negotiations and has since been approved by Ukraine's parliament. During her visit to Washington, Sviridenko met with US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and officials from the Development Finance Corporation to discuss startup funding and an investment strategy. The deal also represents a step toward improving relations between President Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Professor Popovsky, bringing you back in, this of course is a multifaceted conflict that has wider global ramifications. This minerals deal was seen as a shining light of hope for Ukraine at the time, after of course those relations had broken down in that dramatic Oval Office scene that we saw between Trump, JD Vance and Volodymyr Zelensky. Can you talk about the significance of this minerals deal in terms of support, aside from the money that we expect to continue pouring in from NATO and other Western allies?
I think it's a very, very significant deal. It's a long term, it's a fund where many countries, not only United States, can invest, and it will get very good returns. Again, countries that are not supporting Russia. Russia and its allies cannot participate in this, obviously. And if the minerals are mostly based in territories that are now occupied by Russia, it's a very clear long-term significance, because effectively for every investor, including for the US investors here, they will be very interested to liberate the occupied territories of Ukraine as for this deal to go ahead. So effectively, this is interesting. And what does this deal mean? That a huge fund, billions, will be invested in exploring long-term with very good profits for everybody who wants to do that, United States, Europeans, and everybody else, but not Russia and not allies of Russia, to explore and to benefit from the very rare metals and minerals that are currently in territories in Ukraine, but also part of those are in territories occupied by Russia. So effectively, this means that there will be a unity in the world to liberate the occupied territories for this deal to materialize. So effectively, it's not returning to anybody any money. What Ukraine wants to guarantee is a long-term security for those deals to go ahead, to those explorations of minerals and metals. And Minister Sviridenko very clearly mentioned that it's open to all good-willing countries and investors and private and public sectors to come and to explore future benefits from rare minerals and metals on Ukrainian territory, including territories currently occupied by Russia. Clear signal that Russia should go home, and that's basically a commitment, including by the United States, to help Ukraine to liberate its occupied territories.
Yes, and Professor Popovsky, to bring an end to this discussion, there were some critics of this mineral deal. Volodymyr Zelensky himself, as the deal was being drawn up, said that he didn't want to risk the future of Ukraine by giving away too much. And you've alluded to there the fact that a lot of these regions are currently occupied by Russia. Is there a risk that this deal could backfire and potentially Russia could sign a minerals deal with the US themselves and then utilise these areas that they have now taken control of?
I don't expect that. There are no such negotiations. It's very risky actually for Russia to do any deals with United States on territories they currently occupied. Seeing what happened recently on the 1st of June, Russia cannot keep control of those territories for too long. And if anybody wants to deal with Russia, to invest with Russia, I wouldn't advise that. That's very, very risky to deal with Russia in the future. Everybody should stop dealing with Russia because that's money lost. It's one direction. If somebody wants to lose money, yes, please, go and deal with Russia. But if somebody wants to make benefit long term, please go and deal with Ukraine.
Professor Veselin Popovsky, thank you ever so much for covering so much there and providing your insights and knowledge. We will, of course, be across all of the developments in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict and those diplomatic efforts towards peace. We move on now, though, and the United States has vetoed a United Nations Security Council resolution calling for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza. This comes as an Israeli airstrikes across the Strip kill nearly 100 Palestinians in just 24 hours. The US was the only member to vote against the measure. 14 other countries backed it. Washington objected to the resolution, saying the call for a ceasefire was not linked to the release of Israeli hostages. This is what Dorothy Shea, US representative, said when she raised her hand to veto the resolution.
U.S. opposition to this resolution should come as no surprise. It is unacceptable for what it does say. It is unacceptable for what it does not say. And it is unacceptable for the manner in which it has been advanced. The United States has been clear. We would not support any measure that fails to condemn Hamas and does not call for Hamas to disarm and leave Gaza. Any product that undermines our close ally Israel's security is a non-starter. This resolution would undermine diplomatic efforts to reach a ceasefire that reflects the realities on the ground and emboldens Hamas.
Meanwhile, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has described Israel's conduct in Gaza as intolerable and says his government is reviewing sanctions. The UK government has also called for an independent probe into the deaths at Gaza aid shelters. Hamish Falconer, UK Middle East Minister, had the following to say.
We are appalled by repeated reports of mass casualty incidents in which Palestinians have been killed when trying to access aid sites in Gaza. Desperate civilians who have endured 20 months of war should never face the risk of death or injury to simply feed themselves and their families. We call for an immediate and independent investigation into these events and for the perpetrators to be held to account. It is deeply disturbing that these incidents happened near the New Gaza Humanitarian Foundation distribution site.
On the other hand, Gaza rescuers have said that at least 10 people have been killed in the latest Israeli strikes. This comes after the Gaza Health Ministry said that strikes had killed at least 95 Palestinians in the previous 24 hours. Including at a school housing displaced families that was hit near the southern city of Khan Yunis. The aid situation remains dire, with centres closed again for what officials call maintenance. We stay in the region now. Syria's new government has agreed to grant immediate access to suspected former nuclear sites to inspectors from the International Atomic Energy Agency, according to the agency's chief, Rafael Grossi. Grossi made the announcement while speaking in Damascus, where he met President Ahmed al-Sharaa and other officials. The visit marks a significant step in the IAEA's efforts to resume its investigation into Syria's past nuclear activities, long believed to be tied to a clandestine weapons program. The agency aims to clarify activities deemed probably related to nuclear weapons, including a reactor site destroyed by Israel in 2007 in the Deir ez-Zor province, which was never fully accounted for under the Assad regime. Grossi expressed hope that inspections could be completed within months, describing the new Syrian government as committed to opening up and international cooperation. The move comes amid the lifting of sanctions on Syria by the US and the EU. Grossi also announced plans for the IAEA to help rebuild Syria's nuclear medicine and oncology infrastructure, and said President al-Shara has shown interest in pursuing nuclear energy in the future. We head to the Indo-Pacific now. South Korea's new president, Lee Jae-myung, has held his first cabinet meeting, focusing on an emergency economic package aimed at addressing the country's stagnating growth and providing aid to struggling households. Lee is moving swiftly to deliver on a key campaign promise. His rise to power followed a turbulent snap election triggered by widespread anger over a brief martial law imposed by former President Yoon Suk-yeol. The attempt at military rule led to Yoon's impeachment and resignation. In brief remarks, Lee urged the outgoing cabinets which remained in place after Yoon's impeachment to act quickly. Let's listen to what he said.
이 체제 정비가 명확하게 되기에는 상당한 시간이 필요한데 그 시간 동안도 우리 국민들은 어쨌든 어려운 상황에서 고생을 하십니다. 최대한 저는 그 시간을 좀.
So far, Lee has nominated a trusted political ally as Prime Minister and is working quickly to form a full cabinet and staff his office to ensure a smooth transition and continuity of government. Moving on now, US Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth says he is confident NATO allies will agree to increase defence spending to 5% of GDP. This comes ahead of the NATO summit in the Netherlands later this month, where the issue is a top priority. President Donald Trump has pressured alliance members to boost military budgets, but NATO chief Mark Rutte has proposed a compromise of 3.5% on core defence spending by 2032, plus an additional 1.5% on broader security needs. Some countries, including Spain, are reluctant to commit to the higher targets and want more flexible timelines. Diplomats say a deal is likely, allowing Trump to claim success while setting a more realistic bar for European members. Hegseth will press NATO partners in Brussels to finalise the agreement. The alliance will also set new capability targets to address the threat from Russia, which could cost members around 3.5 to 3.7% of GDP on average. Well, we bring you some more breaking news, and at the NATO Defence Ministers Summit in Brussels, the German Foreign Minister Boris Pistorius has said that NATO summit declaration should make clear that Russia is the greatest threat to NATO. This summit, of course, in the wake of the ongoing situation between Russia and Ukraine, where Western countries are, of course, looking for peace, but also at the ongoing security risk that the war poses to them. Moving on now, the US President Donald Trump has reinstated a controversial travel ban targeting nationals from 12 countries. Let's listen in to the US President's statement.
I am signing a new executive order placing travel restrictions on countries including Yemen, Somalia, Haiti, Libya, and numerous others. The strength of the restrictions we're applying depends on the severity of the threat posed. The list is subject to revision based on whether material improvements are made, and likewise new countries can be added as threats emerge around the world.
Well, the White House says the measure is meant to protect America from security threats, citing political instability and high visa overstay rates. The order, which goes into effect on Monday, June the 9th, bans travel from Afghanistan, Myanmar, Chad, the Republic of the Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. 7 more countries, including Cuba and Venezuela, face partial restrictions. Exemptions include lawful US residents, athletes, and certain persecuted minorities from the nations. The president says this action fulfills a campaign promise to tighten broader security and prevent what he calls unvetted danger from entering the country. Trump further explained his reasoning, stating the following.
The recent terror attack in Boulder, Colorado, has underscored the extreme dangers posed to our country by the entry of foreign nationals who are not properly vetted, as well as those who come here as temporary visitors and overstay their visas. We don't want them.
The order has triggered a wave of criticism both domestically and internationally. Somalia vowed to work with the US on security concerns, but reaffirmed its strong ties. Venezuela's Interior Minister warned that being in the United States is a great risk for anyone. At home, Democrats quickly condemned the order. Representative Pramila Jayapal called it a move that will only further isolate the US, while Congressman Don Beyer accused Trump of betraying American ideals. The order is expected to face immediate legal challenges. Well, staying on immigration, a significant immigration ruling. A US judge has ordered that hundreds of Venezuelans deported to El Salvador must be given the right to challenge their detention. The migrants were removed under the 1798 Alien Enemies Act, invoked by the Trump administration. Judge James Boasberg found that they were denied due process and gave the government 1 week to facilitate legal challenges. Meanwhile, in a related development, a Guatemalan man identified as OCG has been returned to the US after a federal judge found he was wrongly deported to Mexico, despite stating he feared persecution. He is now in ICE custody in Arizona. The case highlights broader concerns about due process for migrants under current deportation policies as the Supreme Court weighs in on government powers and migrants' rights. We stay in North America, and the United States has temporarily banned foreign nationals from enrolling at Harvard University and from entering the country. The move, signed by US President Donald Trump, suspends entry for 6 months, citing national security risks. The White House says Harvard has dangerous foreign ties, including to China, and has failed to report illegal student activities. The order also directs the State Department to review and possibly revoke visas of current students under these new restrictions. Harvard has fiercely condemned the order, calling it retaliatory and a violation of First Amendment rights. The university vows to continue defending its international students, who comprise around a quarter of its student body. This escalates a broader feud between Harvard and the Trump administration, which has threatened to strip the university's tax-exempt status and freeze billions in federal funding. Well, we stay in North America once again. Former US President Joe Biden addressed recent allegations concerning his health. During his presidency, Biden denounced the Trump administration's order to investigate an alleged conspiracy aimed at covering up his declining health, calling it a distraction. In a clear and firm statement, Biden emphasized his role and responsibility in making key decisions while in office. He stated, "Let me be clear, I made the decisions during my presidency. I made the decisions about the pardons, executive orders, legislation, and proclamations." Biden further dismissed any suggestions otherwise as both ridiculous and false, reinforcing that he alone was accountable for his presidential actions. This statement comes amid ongoing political tensions and scrutiny over his tenure. Well, we bring you some more breaking news, this time from the Middle East. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that the bodies of 2 hostages, Judy Weinstein Haggai and Gad Haggai, have been retrieved from Gaza. This, of course, comes amid uncertainty over a potential hostage exchange deal that has been in the offing since the previous ceasefire proposal and deal came to a grinding halt after a second phase couldn't be agreed. Israeli sources believe that there are still over 50 hostages dead and alive being held by Hamas, and this breaking news of two hostages, the bodies of two hostages being retrieved, of course, is a bittersweet moment for those in Israel. We will continue to bring you updates from this developing breaking news as we get it, but for now, that is all we have time for. Make sure you stay tuned to NewsX World for all of the latest updates from across the world.